Hi everyone, William here with Grand Duke Dmitri 1915 diary series, and I waited too long today. It's a little after 3 o'clock here, so now the sun is problematic, but we'll go forward nonetheless. We are in October of 1915, kind of the beginning of the end for Imperial Russia. Going back to August, when at the end of the month Nicholas II decided to take over as commander-in-chief, and everybody knew that was going to be a disaster, and it was a disaster, and things are getting very, very serious. And Dmitri has a very close-up view of it, not only meeting with family members who were progressive like him, but also being on the scene with Nicholas, although, as we all know, where it was all really taking place was in Tsarskaya Selo with the Empress, who was meeting with Rasputin, and she was not a bright woman. I'm sorry if I offend anyone by saying that, but she just wasn't. And she was very naive. She didn't understand how the government worked at all, and had this infatuation with Rasputin. And so, yes, of course, it was disastrous. Anyway, our recap. We had Dmitri in Petrograd for a while, was it one day? Yeah, we did one Petrograd diary entry yesterday. The other two were him on the train with the Tsar, going from place to place. So when he was in Tsarskaya, said goodbye to his father, not for long, as it turns out, and then he was able to meet up with Maria in Pskov and went to the hospital where she was the head nurse, the Red Cross hospital. And then started just traveling to review troops with the Tsar in the capacity of an adjutant. So we resume with the 13th/26th of October, and this first diary entry is just a list, but I'll go through it anyway. It's a list of the places that they went on the train and the troops that they reviewed, that the emperor reviewed. So here we go. 11th Army, Sherbachev, 6th Army Corps, 7th Corps, 13th Corps, 22nd Corps, 1st and 3rd Finnish Rifle Brigades, 9th Army, Lechitsky, 11th Corps, 32nd Corps, 33rd Corps, 41st Artillery Brigade, and 3rd Horse Corps, Volochysk, Podvolochysk, Bogdanovka, Tarnopol. So those last four are places. And then we have two names, Sherbachev and Lechitsky. They were generals. One was Dmitri Grigoryevich Sherbachev, or Sherbachov, I'm not sure, who was at that time the commander of the 11th Army, as Dmitri notes. But that Nicholas II, in this, I believe, in this very, very review, or maybe a little later, made him the commander of the 7th Army, and I'm not sure, if that was just sort of a lateral move or if it was a promotion or what. The other one that Dmitri mentions is Platon Alexeyevich Lechitsky, who was commander of the 9th Army. Otherwise, I haven't looked up any of the various corps or units. It's just, you can see that this was probably a pretty exhausting schedule. Nobody was slacking. This was a lot of travel and a lot of reviews all day long. And okay, then they go back to headquarters, and I'll fill in the blanks a little bit, because Alex and the four girls had arrived at headquarters. Headquarters had been shifted from Baranovichi, which was Nikolash's headquarters, to Mogilev, which was now the official headquarters under the Tsar. And the girls had arrived on the 15th. So this is the period that is missing. So Dmitri wrote this this diary entry on the 13th. Then he resumed his diary entry on the 17th. And in those missing days, you had the arrival of Alexandra and the girls. Alexei was already there. He was with his father. And so, whatever went on, Dmitri didn't write diary entries for those 2 days, unfortunately. On the 17th, the diary entry is just one word, Mogilev. And I don't know. Why did he bother? I don't know. But it was just that one word. Okay, and then on the next day, we have 3 words, the 18th/31st October, departure from Mogilev. Okay, so he and Nicholas and Alex and the girls all left together to go to Tsarskaya Selo, or in Dmitri's case, Petrograd. So now, since we were able to go through those so quickly, I'm going to do, I wasn't sure if I would or not, but the first of the Petrograd diary entries, which is the 19th October/1st November, the second date being on the modern Gregorian calendar. And yeah, here we go. Petrograd, lunch at Auntie's, afternoon at the club, dinner with Sablin, Latany Theater, change of ministers, Sazonov, Goremykin, Chancellor. Okay, here we go. Let's decode this. So he's not staying in Tsarskaya. He is in Petrograd, and he is not going off to see his father on that first full day. He probably saw his father when they arrived in Tsarskaya. Instead, he's going to see Ella. What she was doing in Petrograd, I don't know. She lived in Moscow, but she was there. Staying where, I don't know. Dmitri just says that he went to lunch with her. And she was very anti-Rasputin. I doubt she was spending any time with Alexandra while she was there. Although I don't know. I could, find out, I guess. So then, of course, he goes to the club. I mean, what else would he do? But dinner with Sablin. Okay, this was Captain Nikolai Pavlovich Sablin. He was 11 years older than Dmitri, and he was kind of Dmitri's mentor at this period. Dmitri really liked him, but Nicholas wanted Sablin to sort of take charge of Dmitri. I'm sure Nicholas could see that, and he does explicitly, especially the month before the Rasputin assassination, talks about how depressed Dmitri was. But yeah, I mean, Dmitri was always kind of at loose ends when things weren't going well. And so I think Sablin was more or less almost assigned to him, but they were friends. And Sablin was a captain, Dmitri was a captain, but Sablin was 11 years older, which made him, perfect for being a kind of mentor. Anyway, he will also appear in the, I believe, I can't recall, in the post-revolutionary dictionaries. Good Lord, I'm out of it today. The post-revolutionary diaries, but you will have more of another Sablin. I can never remember his Christian name, but he was the man who ran the, it had been the Russian embassy in London. But it survived. I don't know where the funding came from. It survived the revolution. It was no longer obviously the official embassy. It moved to another building. But this Sablin was still there to help Russian exiles with what they needed, visas, that sort of thing. Anyway, I digress. So he has dinner with Sablin. Then he goes to the theater. Alone or with Sablin, we don't know. The Latany Theater was a theater there in Petrograd, and for Dmitri, it was like relaxing and watching some television. He went to the theater whether he was stressed out or not, but especially when he was stressed out. Then he just writes tersely, change of ministers. Well, this was indeed something worth noting in his diaries. He's not focused exclusively on superficial things. In fact, I would say he's very focused on what's going on. Change of ministers. Yes, there was all this ministerial leapfrog, as they call it. September, October were just fraught in Russia. Public opinion had turned strongly against Nicholas and Alexandra because of Rasputin. And, for those that were in the know, not even because of Rasputin as an obnoxious personality, but because they knew once Nicholas II took over, and that could have been justifiable, except when he took over as Supreme Commander. But everybody knew that once he was out of Tsarskaya and out of the capital, Alexandra was going to be making the decisions. I mean, Nicholas would rubber stamp them, and Alexandra would consult with Rasputin. You find a full description of this in the Nicky Sunny letters, the published correspondence of Nicholas and Alexandra. And so, you have this ministerial leapfrog. One day there's one minister, the next day there's another minister. You have the suspension of the Duma and the resignation of liberal Duma members. You have all kinds of disturbing things, and the public, the educated public are outraged. And there's just no way to whitewash it, and it shouldn't be whitewashed. Again, like saying that Alexandra wasn't all that bright. There's the fact that Nicholas was not a good leader. He just wasn't. You can, even in an autocracy, you can slap the face of the public only so often. And you can't make decisions where you're constantly changing your mind, and it's like a revolving door. And, you can't make decisions that are obviously bad for the country, obviously are leading the country, downhill. And we have that in the U.S. right now, if you don't mind me saying so, and it will end badly. And for Nicholas it ended very, very badly, and his children, and Russia. So he may have been the nicest guy in the world, but this was horrible. Okay, so Dmitri notes that change of ministers, and then he mentions the name Sazonov, Goremykin, Chancellor. Okay, so who are these people? Well, these are, some of the leaders of the opposite political blocs. So Sazonov was the foreign minister. He'd been the foreign minister till 1910. He would last a little while longer until I don't know what month in 1916. Goremykin, Ivan Laginovich, Sazonov was Sergei Dmitrievich. He was on the opposite side. So Sazonov was a progressive, and when I say progressive, it was literally called the Progressive Bloc, at least within the Duma. And when I say progressive, that's not to say ultra-liberal. These were people who would have been very happy with a constitutional monarchy, and all they really wanted was for a stable cabinet and the ability of the Duma to act as a true legislative body and to have the power to have some pushback against the Tsar when things got out of control. So that was the progressive bloc. Goremykin was the opposite. Goremykin was the Rasputin element and the reactionary element. The element that looked as Nicholas as basically a kind of demigod and thought there should be no obstacles to him whatsoever, doing whatever he wanted, however irrational it was. So these were opposite sides, and I suppose that's why Dmitri mentions them. He doesn't say anything except Sazonov, Goremykin, Chancellor. So what Goremykin actually was the Prime Minister. He'd become Prime Minister in 1914. He was an elderly man at that time, but he'd sort of been brought out of retirement and dusted off. Alexander liked him very much. He would stay chancellor prime minister until 1916. You know, he wasn't the worst person in the world. I should have looked up to see, why he was dismissed in 1916. But this was just happening, from the point that Nicholas took over as supreme commander until the revolution, nothing was stable. Okay, so what do we have next time? Well, 2 more days in Petrograd, and then back to the to headquarters. And we only have 8 diary entries left for 1915. Then we will be moving on. My plan is 1917, but you're always free to weigh in. There is no diary for 1916. I think Dmitri simply destroyed it. He kept a diary that year, and he refers to it in his 1917 diary, but at some point, because it contained the whole conspiracy around Rasputin and so on and so forth, what there was of it, he destroyed at some point, which is, of course, a pity, but there it is. So 1917 may be where we're heading, and yeah, come back. I hope to see you then. Bye.